Good morning. Well, as you might be able to tell here, we have a little problem with the shower drain. The hot mop the guy came and did yesterday worked great. But we have a leak on the drain portion of the shower pan. Not the tar part, not the hot mop, the plumbing part. And here's what's going on as far as I can tell. That's what the drain looks like. That's the body of the drain. You see here, there's a groove in there, a tapered groove in there, and there's 3 bolts. So between the top part of this drain and the bottom part of this drain, this rubber piece goes. Okay, and again, you see it's got a kind of a matching taper, and it's got like an inside. This goes around the outside of the 2-inch cast iron pipe that becomes the drain. So when this is installed in that groove and you tighten the 3 bolts, you pull the bottom piece up against you make that groove in there smaller. As the groove gets smaller, obviously it compresses the rubber around the pipe. Okay? That was done. Those are stainless steel bolts. That was done when we put this together, the plumbing together. And we tightened the bolts. I put anti-seize on the stainless because, as anybody, any of you with experience with stainless knows, the stainless will gall so that it won't turn, and it's kind of brittle. It's hard, but it's kind of brittle, so it'll break. So we put anti-seize on the threads, and we tightened the bolts. Now, they were nice and tight the other day. I noticed when I took them apart yesterday that they weren't that tight. So evidently the rubber relaxes or something happens. As it sits. So, and another thing I noticed is when we tighten one of the bolts, there's a little rubber washer or an O-ring under the head of the bolt or the washer of the bolt, and it was torn. The O-ring was sticking out. So I'm thinking that maybe the water that was leaking down was getting under the bolt. So there's a number of things. What I'm going to do, putting it back together, I very carefully removed that top piece, which is right there. It's upside down as you're looking at it. I heated the tar till it was a little soft and, not quite runny, and removed the piece so that I wouldn't damage anything. The bolts, one of them was a little exposed, which is actually, it was right where the water was coming down. But it was coming down against the pipe, not out of the bolt thread. So maybe surface tension, but I'm not sure. But the bolt may have been leaking. So what I'm going to do, putting it back together, is I'm going to put some RTV around the outside of that rubber so that it acts like a lubricant against the steel. The steel won't wrinkle it. It'll just slide against it. I'm going to put some RTV on the threads of those bolts so hopefully it'll seal in the threads. And when I'm all done tightening down, I'm going to cover the heads of the bolts with some Hydro Seal before I put the top piece back on. And then we're going to let everything set up, put some water in it, and see if that works. Okay? So here goes. Sorry about the long explanation, but if this video is going to mean anything, I guess it was necessary. Anyway, we'll show you a little more later. Okay, well, we took this apart last night too. There's where that drain goes, up into that clamping ring right there. So we're going to put all this back together now too. I think I'm going to put a little RTV on the outside where the drain meets that rubber sleeve inside that clamping ring. I'm going to try and make sure that gets sealed too. So anyway, I'm going to put this back together now. Try and hang this all back together right now. Bye. Okay, so here's where we're at. Can you see that? I think that's going to seal this time. So the bolts, you see the bolt, remember the bolts that I showed you earlier? They're all covered up now. They're buried in Hydro Seal. And the studs you see there are to align this. There. Obviously it fits tight in the tar. So I'm going to take a propane torch and gently heat that till it gets hot enough to sink into the edge of the tar, and then I'll kind of Melt the tar. Make sure the tar is melted tight around it. Heat the tar a tiny bit too. And then I'll take the studs out and put bolts in there and clamp it down. All right, so like I said, we'll give that a shot and let it sit and everything. Let everything set, get nice and set, and then we'll put some water in it, right, and test it. See you in a bit. Well, there we are. I think we're back at test stage again. So it's right around noon. I'm going to wait till about 3 o'clock, let the RTV and the hydro seal set up before I put water in it. But at about 3 or something like that, 3:30, I'm going to put 3 or 4 gallons of water in here, for sure cover the pan, and see what happens. You see here I heated the tar and let it run towards the drain there, so I think we're in pretty good shape. You can see, I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see the hydro seal on the inside. Made very certain that the weep holes were still open. But I would be willing to bet quite a bit of money that it isn't going to leak anymore. All right, well, we'll find out at around 3 o'clock, 3:30. See you then. Bye. Okay, it's, I don't know, 5:30. So, we put water in here at about 4. Excuse me. And all that wasn't covered with the water was that little corner right there. It's still the same. So obviously it's not leaking. I went and looked underneath. It's dry. So I think we have success. And as you can see, while I was waiting for it to set up, I insulated the walls. Got to go buy a little can of that foam stuff and do around the window. Otherwise, I would say it's ready. Took some of this paper up because I was cutting the insulation on the floor and it got all cut up. So I'll patch that in for the sheetrocker so when they come it's easy to clean. Anyway, I just swallowed wrong, so I can't. My throat is not working too well right now. That's why I'm talking a little strange. Anyway, glad this is history. I think we've successfully dealt with that little hurdle. As you know, any of you that do construction stuff are aware. There's always an unexpected challenge, so all you got to do is just step up to the plate and go, okay, what do I do here? Okay, we're here for now. I don't think you're going to see much more until maybe the sheetrockers come here. If they don't mind being photographed, we'll take some pictures of them. Okay? See you next week. Have a good weekend, everyone. Saranera.